everyone, this is Mateo Beagle and we're here at TOC Americas. I am here with Tom Van Eynde, Managing Director for North America at TIL Group. Hi Tom.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. And well, we just listened to a very interesting session where Tom was a speaker actually about how you can generate added value through infrastructure development. And Tom, I wanted to ask you a little bit more and elaborate from what you talked about your presentation because it was really interesting. I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more on the projects that you currently have in North America. You talked a bit about scarcity of space and how this is driving the projects. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, first, it's always about trying to stay ahead of the growth curve. We are always looking, of course, on what kind of capacity that we have today compared to the volume that we have, and what are the projects for the future, what are the prospects for the future, and ensure that we start moving well in time, of course, to ensure that we can keep on capturing future growth. Historically, that basically was just had to keep on expanding the footprint of your terminal more and more. But it's clear that is getting less and less obvious in the US for the simple reason there is no space anymore. You cannot just start start occupying more space. So we are working on a couple of developments to try to make sure that we still can get that extra capacity created. For example, if we look at our terminal in Long Beach, TTI, right there, one restriction that we have is the berth space. We would like to accommodate more vessels. Luckily there we've got space to add the 4 berths. But whatever capacity you create on the water side, you still need to be able to support it from the land side as well, of course.
Right, yeah.
So the solution there is there's some limited area to expand the footprint, but the majority of the extra capacity to support this extra key capacity will really have to come from further densifying our operation. So it's one of those areas where we really see a need for getting extra capacity added to the market in the upcoming years. Another one that's probably even more urgent is New York. New York, at every peak moment today, we are struggling already still to find space to leave all of that volume. So there as well, we are working right now on an expansion plan where we will be adding a 4 berth as well. And where luckily there we have some space that was used for other purposes, where they were storing scrap iron, where they were storing salt, to integrate those areas into our terminal in order to be able as well to accommodate for the additional volume as well. But within that port, within New York, I mean, it's well known, of course, that land is pretty expensive over there.
Of course.
And even if you are able, not just us, but also the other facilities, if you're able to maximize really the throughput that you can expect to get from the existing area available, then still we are going to be bouncing in a couple of years from now at the capacity constraints.
And then do you think, like, for example, with the expansions or a new berth that you might build, let's say, do we think that maybe in 5, 8, 10 years, a 5th berth could be needed, or maybe some other types of services to cope with the growing demand, the forecasted demand?
Well, the approach we took there was basically to start looking beyond the port itself as well, of course. A lot of the cargo that we're handling there, for example, is whale cargo that is really destined there for, let's say, the market further away from New York, which does not necessarily have to go through New York. So, for example, to make sure that kind of volume we can keep on growing it, for that purpose, we started investing as well in a new development in Baltimore. Baltimore, where recently they did some upgrade works on the rail network, mainly heightening a couple of trains. And that allows today to run also double stack trains out of Baltimore, making the rail product out of Baltimore now competitive as well.
So you duplicate the capacity, almost.
Not duplicating, we're building a new terminal there. A terminal is not as big as what we already have in Newark, but at least that's coming somewhat as an extension of Newark as well. Of course, I mean, Baltimore serves as an ideal gateway for Washington, D.C. That's an important market for it, of course. But you can serve more than just or DC only out of Baltimore. And I really think that that rail product out of Baltimore is going to be an important growth element there as well. Because of constraints that you're having or that you are going to have in the upcoming years in the markets that are today being used for that kind of product.
Okay, and then I wanted to ask you, well, you've already touched on this a little bit. You've mentioned New York, you've mentioned Long Beach, Baltimore as well. So which specific regions or cities, let's say, within North America, where do you envision the biggest potential for growth in terms of investment, in terms of more cargo being passing through? What would you say are the key areas of investment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly, if you purely look at the growth of the past years and assuming that these kind of trends will continue, then we're certainly mainly focusing on East Coast and Gulf, given the fact that these were growing much more aggressively than, for example, the volumes on the West Coast. Houston has been showing a tremendous growth. Luckily, there the port has got really a very extensive expansion plan with several further steps to keep on growing their capacity. So they seem to be ready to keep on handling the increasing volume. But that's certainly an area where I think we are not yet at, let's say, at the end of the growth curve. But on the East Coast, we've got the same thing, of course. I already mentioned Newark, where we are expanding our own capacity. But also further south, we see significant expansion plans on their way, both in Charleston, where the port is basically expanding two of their terminals, the Hugh Letterman terminal, and also in North Charleston, they're expanding to expand the terminal by adding there as well an old paper mill that they acquired. And then the same thing in Savannah, where the port is right now already converting an old general cargo terminal into a container terminal. And somewhere in the mid-30s, we expect as well that they might be building them an additional terminal as well on the Hutchinson Island.
Interesting. So yeah, I see there are lots of places with a lot of potential. And well, last but not least, you also talked a little bit about the challenges that you've currently been facing, such as the impact of the ban on Chinese manufactured equipment or the BABA requirements, Buy American, Build American. How do you think these issues are impacting the terminals in terms of operational efficiency?
Operational efficiency, that should not be immediately impacted by it to the extent that these kind of extra cost elements are not going to slow down investments. And that is actually the main risk I think that we see. I mean, some of those investments are getting now so prohibitively expensive that people might start considering to postpone those. I mean, we've seen, and there are different elements driving up those prices. We see, of course, somewhat a ban on Chinese STS cranes. It basically means if you want to buy an STS crane in the US now, you have to look at the other manufacturers. But that market is rather small. So they just start increasing their prices. And I'm talking about quite significant increases in price. I'm talking about 50-60% higher prices for the same crane compared to buying that crane outside of the US. That's one element. And then, of course, on top of the increased unit prices, we see then as well, of course, that we have now in most countries import duties in case you start buying equipment there for the US terminals. The issue is, for most equipment, you don't have a US alternative, so automatically end up buying your equipment with 50% import duty on top of it. So that's an extra cost element. And then, of course, the third element that you mentioned there, the BABA requirements are also, of course, requiring you in some contexts to really start procuring certain elements in US steel and these kind of elements, which is of course also coming at an additional cost. All of these kind of things are very quickly accumulating, of course. Just to give you an idea, in one of the developments that we are working on, we had a realistic, even prudent estimate for what the STS cranes were going to cost us. Then you're not allowed anymore to buy Chinese cranes. Unit costs go up. You get some import duties there as well. And suddenly you end up with a cost for the same cranes, which is going to cost you 130 million US dollars more for the same equipment. I can tell you the original cost estimate was really a conservative, prudent one, but these are the kind of elements that you cannot see coming, of course. There is going to be the biggest crane manufacturer in the world that is certainly no longer an option for yourself to buy from.
I'm guessing it becomes really tricky also to plan ahead, because then you might need to rethink plans or investments because the cost goes up significantly. I don't envy that challenge, that task. But yeah, I mean, I look forward to learning more about what you guys are going to be doing in the coming years, and hopefully we'll learn more about it in the next talk. But for now, that's all the time we have, so we need to keep it short. But I wanted to thank you so much, Tom, for your support. It's always a pleasure to have you. There you have it. See you at the next talk. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.